the Registrar and the curator of the show Rewilding Structures. I'm joined here today by Gipe, painter, and one of the participants in the show did this beautiful oil painting behind us. Let's go take a look.
All right.
So can you explain to me for a moment, or for the audience watching, what this painting is about? What are we looking at?
Well, right now it's a measurement of the social distancing we have, which is
That's
perfect.
that's
8 feet, it's good. But as an image, we're looking at one of the world's largest holes. It's the Mir diamond mine in Siberia. And it's almost 2/3 of a mile across, well over half a mile across, and 1,700 feet deep. It's not used anymore. It's a dead mine. It's just abandoned, but they continue to dig all around it underground. And the little town that's up here, it's actually 40,000 inhabitants. We're sort of looking at it. The town is kind of to our back in a certain way in this image, but they continue to mine underground. But basically, we have a dormant pit, which is, quite a statement. You can see it from space.
Wow, so like at the space station or like Saturday?
Yeah,
that's quite a storm.
Especially it's in the middle of nowhere, so it kind of
Here, this is mine. So, for those of you that don't know about Rewilding Structures, the show's about the Anthropocene, which is the epoch of human interaction with the environment that's causing irreparable scarring, like in the case of this mine, on our environment and our planet. When you painted this image, were you trying to make an environmental painting?
Well, I've been very interested in environmental issues since I can remember, really, growing up. And I grew up in near Baltimore, so you have kind of an industrial kind of area.
Was it John Waters from Baltimore?
I think John Waters is from Baltimore, and he was, I'm sure, equally touched by how unique Baltimore is. But actually, it's my time in Arizona. I teach at the University of Arizona in Tucson. And there's lots of mining around there. There's copper mines. And if you hike up into the mountains, you see them just spread out in the landscape like there had been a war at some time. And still kind of dust is coming up out of them. They don't know how to close them. Once you have a pit, you have a pit. There's nothing you can do about it. You can try to fill it in, but it's still dead. And there's a man named Peter Koch who started a project called Extraction, which I'm part of. And he describes it as, he says, just think about a skyscraper in reverse. And also, for every skyscraper, there's almost one of these, because you have to dig an enormous pit to make the skyscraper. So there's all this kind of, I think at the end of the day, like, these paintings are involved with kind of describing this indelible mark and kind of invasion that we've made. But also it's painted, and it's about landscape and landscape painting too, and there's obviously a seductive kind of
beauty almost.
You want to say beauty? Go right ahead. I'll leave that to you.
It's a terrifying beauty, but it's still beautiful. Like it's impressive, absolutely.
And I think that landscape painting is definitely involved in the series, and well, we can talk about that. I don't know what your next question is.
The next one will go right there. So this painting is from a series of Russian drone footage. Could you tell me a little bit about what about the footage really caught your eye and inspired you to do it?
Well, I wanted to do a series about epic landscape, but I wanted it to be about today. So I started looking at video footage, and as many series start, I suppose, in contemporary society, I began on Google, and so I'm, looking up propaganda footage, drone footage, Russian drone footage, and also this network RT, or the propaganda network of the Russian government. I start to find a lot of videos of drone footage going over various landscapes in Russia, but all over the world, in fact. So there's one moment Putin had sent drones in to follow choppers and warplanes that were coming in to bomb Damascus. This would have been like 2015. And the results on video were terrifying, but also had a sense of the sublime. Indeed, they looked like Turner paintings when you froze them, the colors and the kind of abstraction that occurred. So I still one of those, still a frame of one of the videos, which is great. You don't have to look for still photos anymore. You know, you can find exactly what you want and just click it, and there you have it. And so the whole series comes from different drone footage that comes from around the world. And it's used for newscasts, and then it's also, I think he gets a two for surveillance.
Good old Putin. So this is in Russia as well.
Yes.
Was this entire series in Russia, or was it just Russian drones that were taking the footage?
It's just the island. See, what's epic landscape like? What's the Anthropocene like? When it's visualized through a Russian drone that's just flying around and catching things. I then subscribed to the news feed of Rewilding, or RT network, and you know, they just hold the camera. They just put the camera next to an ammo dump that's blowing up, and for 3 hours, I call it Tarkovsky news, where I just sit and watch, you know, and they just will take a little bit out and put it on a newscast or something. But and then they have drone flights, just minutes and minutes of them, you know, just going up, going down, and then they later edit those and make them into newscast stories. So
I would love to see you do some pieces out of Tarkovsky, like was it The Stalker when they got in the room?
Yeah.
I could totally see like a big
well, he was a filmmaker that was a painter too.
Oh, absolutely. No, his movies were paintings.
Yeah.
But I think at the same, like it parallels, I think you're a painter which has an eye for the cinematic. And it's very obvious there. How long have you been using photographic and film images as your reference point?
Always.
Forever and ever?
Yeah. First I was pillaging like Fortune magazines. I was doing a series about the 40s and 50s. It's kind of a Century of Progress idea. I even had my own museum called the Century of Progress Museum. I was the only artist in it. Which was a traveling museum.
Divine was the reader.
Mostly went to galleries. But I did have museum shows of the Century of Progress Museum. And it contained these kind of propagandistic images of industry, kind of. It was very interesting when I started to do these paintings about factories and they'd have all the smoke billowing out. And I thought just, you know, hell on earth. And then a woman might come up to me, and older perhaps, and say, you know, when my father was working in factories in Dundalk, when we saw the smoke coming out, that meant I got candy and I got, you know, no, it was a good, that was a happy thing for her to see. And I realized very early on that any of these kind of images would have a lot of slippage involved, and that, you know, you would get anecdotal evidence completely to the contrary. I just watched a small documentary about this hole, and it's completely heroic about how the guys dug it in the Siberian permafrost, and then, yeah, it was just like, wow, okay, I just see it a very different way.
But yeah, I think this entire show, the Rewilding Structures, is very much, for me, like the beauty in something perhaps terrifying. How do you think that your work relates to the theme of the show?
Well, I think a pit is the most kind of enduring example of the Anthropocene you could ever imagine. I mean, like I said, you see it from space, so I mean, that's going to be there for a really long time. Nobody's going to take the time to fill in that hole for the end of humanity. It's going to still be there. So, I don't really tinker with it very much. I mean, a lot of the work, you know, our work, there's a kind of process where it's part of the process. I think mine is more of a kind of a representation of an image that, you know, it has different layers to it. I mean, as the pit itself, it's an environmental disaster. Then as a photograph taken by the drone, it's part of another kind of level of aestheticization of the image and how it enters into culture. And then to paint a still from the drone of the pit further kind of romanticizes it and creates a more complicated notion of it in my mind. I mean, people might say, well, it's very beautiful, but it's not beautiful, but you know. So this duality kind of, I think, appears more apparent. There's more contrast in that duality when it's a painted image.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with you. And to close out, I have two last questions for you. The first one, I'm impressed by this, like the scale of this is enormous. How long did it take you to paint this? Or how long did you work on it?
I guess it's finished. It's been in my studio for 2 years, maybe a little more than 2 years, and you know, sometimes I have a little bit of some color on, I'll go over and work on it, but I'd say the bulk of the work probably took about a year off and on, and now it's just in the background. There's still things in it. Here it is in the museum, so we'll just call it finished. And, you know.
Well, I would love to show it again when it's more finished. It looks finished to me.
I think put you standing right there in the middle.
Me falling into the pit. With John Waters. So speaking of details in the painting, are there any details that you'd like to point out to the viewers? Any little pieces or even something to pull back and to notice?
Yeah, I think that I tried to broadcast the amount of detail in the main motif here pretty equally because the drone's focus is very concise. There's no like what's sharp, close, and it's just flat in focus. So that's probably it's not the way you would see it if you were standing on the edge in a way. It's much more saturated and concise. So in that way, it refers back to its photographic source for me. So I try to broadcast these details pretty evenly over the surface of it. If anything, you know, if you want to come in here and dig on that, you're free to do that. But for the most part, I kind of want people to stand back and get the whole you know, aspect of it. So I wouldn't say as much as looking for details or being interested in that as kind of creating a scale, at least, that would force the viewer to kind of take it in at a certain distance.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Great pleasure to be in the show. Great privilege to be here. TAM. Go TAM.